Let me paint a picture for you. It's a Sunday evening. You're sitting on your couch, maybe with a coffee going cold beside you, and you open your banking app. Not because you want to, because something in the back of your mind has been nagging at you for weeks. That quiet, low-grade anxiety that never fully goes away. And you look at the number, and it doesn't feel like enough. It doesn't feel like it's moving. You've been working for years now, putting in the hours, paying the bills, doing everything you're supposed to do. And somehow, the distance between where you are and where you thought you'd be by now feels wider than it should. Sound familiar? Because I think a lot of us carry that feeling around, and I think most of us have no idea why. The reason isn't laziness. It isn't bad luck. It's something far quieter than that. Something so slow and so invisible that by the time most people notice it, it's already been doing its work, or in some cases, not doing its work, for years. Today we're going to talk about that thing, and I promise you by the end of this, that Sunday evening feeling, it's going to feel a little different. Here's what most people think compounding is. They think it's a math trick. Something you learn in a spreadsheet, maybe hear about in a podcast, and then quietly forget about because it sounds boring and distant from your actual life. And honestly, the way it's usually explained, I don't blame anyone for tuning out. Put money away early. Let it grow. Be rich later. That's roughly the pitch. And while it's technically true, it completely misses the point of why compounding actually matters. Not just financially, but psychologically. See, the real reason compounding is so powerful has nothing to do with math. It has everything to do with how our brains are wired. We are built to understand linear things. You work 1 hour, you get paid for 1 hour. You save $50 this month, you have $50 more than last month. That makes sense. That feels real. That's the kind of progress we can actually see and feel. But compounding doesn't work like that. It works in a way that is almost impossible for our brains to naturally grasp. And that disconnect, that gap between how compounding actually works and how our minds perceive it, is the reason so many people feel stuck, even when they're doing everything right. So let's fix that. Let's actually understand what's happening. Because once you do, once you truly see it, your relationship with money is going to shift in a way that no budgeting app or savings plan ever could. Let's start with the basics, but let's do it right this time. Compounding at its core is simply this. You earn returns not just on the money you put in, but on the returns you've already earned. Your money starts making money on its own money, and that's where it gets interesting. Let me give you a number that might not sound impressive at first. Say you invest $200 a month. That's it, $200. Maybe that feels like a stretch, maybe it doesn't. But just stay with me for a second. If you do that consistently, and your money grows at roughly 8% a year, which is close to the historical average of broad stock market index funds over long periods, and I want to be clear, past performance doesn't guarantee future results, but it gives us a reasonable ballpark. Here's what happens. After 10 years, you put in $24,000 of your own money. And your total? Roughly $37,000. That's a $13,000 gift. From time. Not from you. From the math. Okay, decent. But not life-changing. Not yet. Now keep going. After 20 years, you've put in $48,000 of your own money. And your total is around $118,000. $70,000. That's $70,000 you never worked for, never earned at your job, never asked for. It just showed up because you kept going. And after 30 years, 40 years, the numbers get almost absurd. After 30 years, you're looking at around $290,000. You put in $72,000. The rest, over $200,000, that's all compounding. And here's the thing that really stops people in their tracks when they finally see it clearly. Almost all of that growth happens in the last 10 years. Not the first 10, the last 10. The majority of the wealth, the majority of the magic, is invisible for most of the journey. That's the crux of everything. That's why this feels so frustrating and so invisible for so long, and why it eventually feels almost miraculous. And this is where psychology comes in, because our brains are not designed to feel patient about something we can't see working. We feel progress in real time. We feel satisfaction when we see the number go up. And for the first 10, maybe 15 years of compounding, the number barely moves, at least not in a way that feels emotionally significant. So what do? We lose faith. We think, this isn't working. We get discouraged. We stop. And stopping is the only way compounding ever actually fails. Let me say that again, because it matters. Stopping is the only way compounding ever actually fails. Not the market dipping, not a bad year, not even a few bad years. The thing that kills compounding is us, our impatience, our inability to feel something that's happening too slowly for our emotions to register. There's actually a name for this in psychology. It's related to something called present bias. It's our deeply ingrained tendency to overvalue rewards we can have right now and undervalue rewards that are coming later, even if the later reward is dramatically bigger. Think about it in your own life. How many times have you chosen comfort today over something that would have been better for tomorrow? Not because you're weak or undisciplined, because your brain is literally built to do that. It's a survival mechanism. Our ancestors needed to eat today. Tomorrow was uncertain. So our brains learned to prioritize the present. Compounding asks us to do the exact opposite of what our brains naturally want. It asks us to trust a process we can barely see for a timeline that feels uncomfortably long, based on a reward that our brains can't emotionally connect to yet. And that is the real challenge of compounding. It's not financial. It's psychological. Now here's something else worth understanding. Compounding doesn't just work with money you invest in the stock market. It works everywhere there is growth on top of growth. Think about learning a skill. The first few months, you're terrible. You see almost no progress, but every small thing you learn builds on the last thing. And one day, without a clear moment of arrival, you realize you're actually good at it. That's compounding in your life, not just your bank account. Think about relationships, the small, quiet things you do for someone, the consistency, the showing up, the care. They don't feel dramatic in the moment, but they stack, they compound. And over years, they become the foundation of something really meaningful. Money is just the most measurable version of this pattern. But the pattern is everywhere. So here's the mindset shift. And I want you to really sit with this one because it changes the way you look at everything. Stop measuring your financial progress the way you'd measure a salary raise or a bonus check. Stop expecting to feel it month to month. Because compounding isn't a feeling, not at first. It's a structure. It's a quiet, invisible architecture that's being built whether you can sense it or not. The shift is this. Instead of asking, how much do I have right now? Start asking, what am I building right now? Those are two completely different questions. The first one makes you anxious. The second one makes you purposeful. And here's why that distinction matters so much. When you're focused on the number, the current balance, the current state, you're measuring yourself against a timeline your brain invented. You're comparing where you are to some vague idea of where you should be, and that comparison is almost always going to feel discouraging, because compounding front-loads the frustration and backloads the reward. But when you shift to thinking about the structure, about what's being built, about the quiet process that's happening underneath, everything changes. Suddenly, a month where you didn't see much growth isn't a failure. It's just an early layer. It's the part of the foundation that nobody sees but everything rests on. This is how some of the wealthiest, most financially stable people in the world actually think about money. Not in terms of how much they have right now, but in terms of the systems they've set up. The quiet, boring, unsexy systems that just keep running. And I want to be honest with you. This mindset shift doesn't make it easy. It doesn't make the waiting feel fun. But it does make the waiting feel survivable. And more importantly, it makes you far less likely to do the one thing that will actually derail your financial future, which is giving up. There's also something genuinely freeing about understanding this, because it means you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to invest huge amounts of money. You don't have to time the market or find the perfect stock. You just have to start, keep going, and not stop. That's it. That's the whole secret. And in a world that constantly tells you you need to be doing more, hustling harder, optimizing everything, there's something almost radical about the idea that consistency alone is enough. So what does this actually look like in real life, not in theory? In your life, with your numbers, with your schedule. First, the most important step is just starting. I know that sounds obvious, but it's genuinely the hardest part for most people. Not because they can't afford to invest, because it feels pointless when the amounts are small. $20 a month feels like nothing. $50 feels like nothing. But here's the thing. Those amounts aren't nothing. They're the seed. They're the part that starts the clock. And the clock is the most valuable thing you have. Not your income, not your savings rate. The clock. Because compounding is fundamentally about time. The earlier you start, the more time you give the process to do its quiet, invisible work. A 25-year-old investing a modest amount will, in most realistic scenarios, end up with more than a 40-year-old investing significantly more, simply because of the extra years. Second, automate it. Not because automation is some life hack, because automation removes the decision from the equation. And when you have to make a decision every month about whether to invest, present bias kicks in. Your brain says, well, I could use that money for something I want right now. And sometimes that's fine. But if you make that decision every single month, you'll make it wrong more often than you'd like to admit. Set it up so the money moves without you having to choose. Make it the default. Make it boring. Because boring, in this context, is exactly where the power lives. Third, and this one matters more than people realize, don't touch it. Seriously, the biggest enemy of compounding isn't a market crash. It's you opening the app during a downturn and panic selling because the number went down and your brain is screaming at you that something is wrong. Something isn't wrong. The market goes up and down. That's not a bug. It's the whole system. And the people who come out ahead in the long run are almost always the ones who did the least, who looked the least, who trusted the process the most. That's not easy. I'm not going to pretend it is, but it might be the single most important financial skill there is. And fourth, give yourself a reason beyond the number, because if the only thing motivating you is a balance on a screen, it's going to be very hard to stay consistent when that balance feels small or when life gets stressful and the temptation to dip into it feels overwhelming. Think about what the money actually represents for you. Maybe it's the ability to take a year off without panic. Maybe it's being able to help your parents. Maybe it's giving your kids a starting point you never had. Whatever it is, hold on to that. Because on the days when the math doesn't feel inspiring enough, the feeling behind the math will be. I want to come back to that image from the beginning. You on the couch on a Sunday evening looking at your app and feeling like you're not moving fast enough. I want you to know something. You probably are moving. You might not feel it. The number might not look impressive yet. But if you've started, if you're being even a little bit consistent, the process is already working. It's just working on a timeline your emotions haven't caught up to yet. And that's okay. That's not a flaw in you. That's just how this works. It works slowly at first, invisibly, and then all at once. And the people who make it through the invisible part, not because they're smarter or richer or more disciplined than anyone else, but because they understood what was happening and chose to trust it, those are the people who look back years from now and feel genuinely different about money. Not anxious, not behind, just settled. Compounding is not a get-rich-quick strategy. It's not flashy. It won't trend on social media. But it is, quietly and reliably, one of the most powerful forces in the world. And it's available to you. Right now. In whatever amount you can manage. Starting today if you want. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to begin and then you have to keep going. That's the whole thing. Progress beats perfection. Consistency beats intensity. And time, quiet, unglamorous, patient time, beats almost everything else. So close the app, finish the coffee. And tomorrow or this week or whenever feels right, take one small step, just one, and then let the quiet math do the rest.